Can you even believe the audacity? 8 years ago, my in-laws practically spat in my face with a brutal prenup, demanding I sign it or lose their daughter.
Now?
Now they're absolutely furious because I'm worth 5 times what they are, and I refuse to let them tear up that very same contract. What kind of twisted game is this? And why on earth would I let them play it? Okay, so rewind 8 years. My wife and I were building something truly beautiful. We met when I was in sales, but after a year, I dared to chase a lifelong dream, launching my own electronics brand. We were both 27, almost 28 when I finally dived in headfirst. And my wife, she was my absolute rock, my biggest cheerleader. Seeing me finally get to start my dream business made her absolutely glow with happiness. Her parents, though, not so much. They immediately saw me as a leech, living off their daughter's money. And yeah, I won't lie, she was definitely supporting us during that lean startup phase. I didn't have a steady income then. But it wasn't like I was completely useless, you know? I was working my butt off, pouring everything I had into building something. So at 29, I proposed. We were planning our wedding, everything felt right, everything felt perfect. Then, a couple of months before the big day, her parents dropped the bomb. They told me I had to sign a prenup. Had to. It wasn't just about keeping assets separate in case of divorce, which fine, I guess.
But it went so much deeper than that.
It stipulated I'd have to repay my wife and them for any support during my business venture. They'd occasionally sent money to my wife, mostly for her, to help us out. But this clause felt like a cold, hard reminder, etched in legal terms. You're indebted to us. It was so unnecessary. And the ultimate kicker? They explicitly told me this prenup was the only way they'd ever feel safe, accepting me as their son-in-law. Can you imagine? A safety net for them, against me. The insult stung on so many levels. First, they just assumed I'd forever be a burden, that I'd never make something of myself, that I'd rely solely on my wife, which was incredibly unfair because I was already grinding, working nonstop to get my business off the ground, to not be a burden on anyone. And secondly, even before I quit my sales job, they just never liked me. From the very first time my wife brought me home, they had a problem.
Why?
Because I wasn't good enough. And by good, I mean rich. For context, they run a super successful real estate firm. Born into money. Always lived comfortably. My parents? Regular folks. Dad was a high school football coach. Mom managed a coffee shop. I didn't exactly struggle, but I sure didn't have their kind of generational wealth. From day one, they looked down on me. It was constant. Snarky remarks. Mean comments disguised as jokes. Just this utterly insufferable, weird attitude around me. And I never, ever said a word back. My wife would get so worked up, so angry on my behalf, but I refused to let them see they'd gotten under my skin. I figured the best way to win was to ignore them. My wife loved me, I loved her. That was all that mattered. Their approval? Utterly irrelevant. So when they pushed that prenup in front of me, yeah, it stung. It really did. But I signed it. And my wife, she was offended too, but we talked about it beforehand. She signed without a complaint. We both knew their game. They were trying to humiliate me, to push me away right before the wedding, hoping I'd back off. Hoping they could sideline me and somehow get their daughter to be with someone more appropriate by their standards. Well, spoiler alert, they haven't and they won't. My wife and I are always on the same team. Fast forward several years. My business? It grew. I hustled. I poured every ounce of my energy into it. And in the last 2 years, something incredible happened. It didn't just grow, it exploded. Exponentially. All those late nights, the strategic social media marketing, the sheer, relentless hard work, it finally paid off. Suddenly, out of nowhere, we hit it big. And now I'm worth almost 5 times what my in-laws are. Yeah, 5 times. So, what happens when you're suddenly the big fish? Of course, they want to dissolve the prenup. All of a sudden. They came over a few days ago, we had dinner, and once our son was in bed, they pulled us aside. They'd given it a lot of thought, they said. Now was the time to talk to lawyers and dissolve that pesky prenup. My wife looked genuinely surprised. Even I was taken aback for a second. But then I just declined. Flat out. I looked them dead in the eye and said I didn't think it was necessary. I reminded them they had insisted it was the only way they'd ever feel safe accepting me. And I, being the considerate son-in-law, certainly didn't want them to lose their safety net. I was absolutely dripping with sarcasm, trying to sound as sincere as I possibly could, and I think they definitely caught on. They tried to backtrack. "Oh, years have passed, you have a son now, we have no doubts anymore," they insisted. But I just shook my head. "I'm not open to discussing this anymore," I told them. That's when they started getting agitated. Really agitated. They said it was their idea in the first place, so now I should respect their wishes and have it dissolved. That because they're older and more experienced, we should just take their advice to avoid future bitterness. I mean, bitterness? Seriously? I had no idea what they were even talking about. After some pointless bickering, I tried to shut it down. "Look, my wife and I aren't getting divorced. We have no plans for it. Drop it." But they wouldn't. And that's when it turned into a full-blown fight. All the drama we'd swept under the rug for years? It all came spilling out. I finally called them out. I said, "You only designed this prenup. You only brought it to me. To humiliate me. To remind me I wasn't in your precious tax bracket." And now that I'd surpassed them, they suddenly wanted to pretend none of that ever happened. They tried to spin it, saying they just wanted to secure their daughter's future, in case I turned out to be some gold-digging husband who would leech off her. Yeah, right. A safety net for her against me. It went on and on. Eventually, I was just too exhausted to argue. "I'm done," I told them. "You need to leave." I thought I was being perfectly reasonable. We were getting too loud. Our son was asleep. It was late. I just wanted them gone so I could get some sleep and process this mess. But they took offense. Oh, they took great offense. They actually yelled that the only reason I was successful was because of their support and my wife's. And that's where I drew the line.
Because they never supported me.
They only ever supported their daughter. Now, I'm grateful for the times they sent money to my wife when I was starting out.
I really am.
But that money wasn't for me. It was for her. And honestly, we could have survived without it. I had savings. My wife would ask them for money when she needed it for personal stuff after household expenses. I offered my savings, but she'd say, "No, my parents have it, they won't mind." So technically, yes, they supported us, but it was only for her sake. They never had an ounce of faith in me. And emotionally, don't even get me started. They never made me feel like family. Never. So to have them throw it in my face, claiming they were responsible for my success? That was utterly infuriating. I could have done it without them. They played no role. When I told them that, they just screamed louder. The fight exploded. They called me ungrateful. Then, at some point, they turned to my wife. "You need to make a choice now," they demanded. "We've supported this relationship long enough, but this is getting out of hand because he refuses to acknowledge our contributions." My wife, bless her heart, somehow convinced them to leave that night. Since then, we haven't spoken to them directly. She's tried to stay in touch, tried to get them to apologize. I told her I don't need an apology. I just need them to stay away from me. They can see our son, see her, fine. But I need space. That fight, it had been brewing for years, you know? I'm honestly surprised we avoided it for so long. But now it's done. And I just want them gone. But then, it got even crazier. While my wife was trying to get them to apologize, they were actively trying to brainwash her into divorcing me. She came to me one evening, phone in hand, showing me their messages. She was devastated. Our son loves his grandparents, and she just wanted things to be normal. I did too, honestly. But after reading those texts, forget it. They refused to admit they'd ever treated me badly. Acted like they had every right to humiliate me. And then, they accused me of being ungrateful for their support, which, again, was barely there and certainly not for me. They told her I didn't love her enough to respect her family. Said my refusal to dissolve the prenup meant I was suspicious, now that I had money. Just utter rubbish. They were trying to manipulate her into leaving me, but she wasn't buying any of it. She was just exhausted. Trying to talk sense into them felt impossible. The only thing she almost agreed with was their point about some financial support in the early days. But I wouldn't acknowledge it. It was for her. They couldn't say no to their daughter. If she'd let me, I would have used my savings. We wouldn't have needed a dime from them. And remember how they treated me? Like I was only after money? I already paid the price for that. So I decided, I'll pay them back. Every single penny they claimed to have given. I'm doing well now. I don't want to owe them anything, ever again. I want to stand up for myself without them throwing this in my face. My wife thought it was a good idea. She was desperate for them to stop trying to brainwash her. But of course, it wasn't that simple. When my wife told them I was ready to write a check, they got offended. This isn't about money, they suddenly declared. Which is insane because the fight we just had. It felt all about money. Now, they said, it was about the respect I'd never shown them. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I've always been polite, civil. They're the ones who always had an attitude. But they think one incident of me refusing to be thankful for their minimal, conditional support equals years of them disrespecting me and my family? It's not the same thing. Not at all. And now, even my wife fully agrees. They didn't support us as much as they claim. And I'm offering to pay back what they did. So where's the problem? They're still trying to manipulate my wife, telling her she needs to take our son under her wing, hinting at custody battles. It's pathetic. Ruining our marriage wasn't enough for their egos. They want to rip our family apart completely. Fast forward another couple of weeks. My wife had stopped responding to her parents. She'd tried so hard to explain why they were wrong, but they just kept telling her to file for divorce. She was done. It was a lost battle. So, what did they do? They showed up. At our house.
Today.
I opened the door. They completely ignored me. Just walked straight in, calling for my wife. Honestly, I wasn't even surprised. After accusing me of disrespect, here they were, being the ultimate hypocrites. I didn't say a word. Just waited. When my wife came out, she didn't mince words. I'm not talking to you, she said, her voice shaking with restrained anger, unless you're ready to acknowledge our side of things. They immediately went on the offensive, saying they were there to confront her behavior, that she was going down the same path as me and becoming disrespectful, too. And if I was indebted to them, so was she. That was it. My wife snapped. She started shouting, and rightfully so. She was their daughter. She hadn't asked them for anything. They'd done things for her out of their own free will. They had no right to hold it over us. Other parents do things for their kids out of love, she yelled, her voice breaking, not to throw it in their faces later like you do. She reminded them how much we'd tried to be grateful, to show them respect, despite their ridiculous behavior towards me and my family all these years. How we'd quietly put up with it to avoid drama, to keep the peace. But at this point, she declared, looking them dead in the eye, it's impossible not to stand up. You can't just demand respect. Sometimes you have to earn it. And this is one of those times. She argued with them for a long time. I just stood there, in the corner, a silent presence, not wanting to engage. But when she started getting agitated, I moved to her side, just to be there. And of course, they immediately turned on me, blaming me for everything. Saying it all started because I refused to dissolve the prenup. And that's when I finally spoke up.
Calmly.
No, I told them. My voice was steady, despite the hurricane brewing inside me. This didn't start with the prenup. This started the moment you decided I wasn't good enough because I wasn't from your exclusive rich kid club. That's what you've been mad about all these years. That's why you treated me so badly. I explained that I put up with it for years, but they couldn't get away with it forever. And that's why I refused the prenup. They needed to know I wasn't their puppet, that I wouldn't just do as they say. Things got even more heated. They screamed, cursed, said horrible things trying to make me lose my cool. But I wouldn't. I knew that's exactly what they wanted. And my refusal to react just made them even more furious. They finally realized they couldn't break me. So, they gave my wife the ultimate ultimatum. You need to seriously choose, they told her, their voices sharp with desperation, between your family and him. And without a second's hesitation, my wife declared, I choose my family, meaning me and our son. Then she told her parents to get out of her house, said they'd be receiving the check soon, and after that, we were done. They were genuinely shocked. They probably thought they'd get another chance, like always. But not this time. My wife and I, we'd had enough. When they tried to argue, she looked them dead in the eye and said, if you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police and having you arrested. And just like that, they left. We blocked them everywhere. We're cutting them out of our lives. It's going to be hard, explaining to our son why he can't see his grandparents anymore. But he has another set of grandparents who love him fiercely. And maybe, just maybe, someday in the distant future, reconciliation will be possible. But for now, this had to be done. We tried so hard to make it work, but they only ever wanted things on their terms. And that's just not possible anymore. I'm honestly so incredibly proud of my wife and of myself for finally taking a stand. Some things just have to be addressed, no matter how uncomfortable. And we're so relieved it's finally dealt with. So, what do you think? Was I wrong to hold on to that prenup, or was this the only way to finally break free from their manipulation? Have you ever had to draw such a hard line with family, even when it means sacrificing relationships? Tell me in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.